Dr. Ben Carson, author of the #1 New York Times bestseller, One Nation, joins us now. Doc, good to see you again. And so it appears, it started earlier this week with the Wall Street Journal piece, and more we're hearing the word malaise, akin to what was bandied about during the Carter administration, when Americans just lost all faith in their government. What say you?
Well, first of all, this is an exceptional nation, and it happens to be the pinnacle nation in the world. Not the first one. There have been others before us: ancient Egypt, Greece, Rome, Great Britain, France, Spain. All pinnacle nations, all thought they were going to be there forever, all went down the tubes. What happened in each case? They became enamored of sports and entertainment, lifestyles of the rich and famous. They tolerated political corruption. They lost their moral compass. They lost their vision. These are all the things that are happening to us. And the real question is, can we learn from the things that happened in the past that led to the decline of great nations, or must we inexorably go down the same path? I believe that we can learn, because we're different than all of those other nations. We are the child of every other nation. So we have all of that history, and we have their best interest in mind. We also are a Judeo-Christian nation. Now, I know the president says that we are not, but he needs to go back and read some of the documents of our founders, and I think he might be re-educated on that matter. Those values are the things that really gave us strength. Did we make mistakes? Of course we make mistakes. Every nation makes mistakes. But we are the most benign superpower the world has ever known. And if we go off the scene, we will be replaced by someone else. The likelihood of them being as benign as we are is extremely remote.
Well, that's a big question. And there was an op-ed in the New York Times earlier this week by a German newspaper editor saying, look, when Europe can afford to sit back because we've got America that has our back, America doesn't have the same luxury. No one's going to step in, no one good, if we step back and wait for somebody to fill this void.
Absolutely. But I do think that there's hope on the horizon. You know, as I go around the country and see these just humongous, enthusiastic crowds of people.
That's for you. That's for you, Dr. Carson. I don't know that that's, you know, necessarily for America in general, or the direction in which we're heading at the moment.
Well, but what I'm trying to convey to people, and I think it's getting through, is that they need to stop being intimidated, and they need to stand up for what they believe in, and they need to start having conversations. They need to talk to their uncle who's 80 years old and hasn't voted in 20 years, and make sure that he's apprised of what's going on and help him to get out there. And if he's an invalid, get him an absentee ballot and help him fill it out. There's millions and millions of people who are sitting on the sidelines who need to be reactivated, and they can be, but we each have to make it our personal mission.
To what extent do you feel that divisiveness is playing a role in what we're seeing right now?
It's playing an extremely large role in what we're doing. There are elements in our society whose only desire is to drive a wedge into any little crack that they can find. Therefore, race wars, income wars, age wars, gender wars, religious wars,
how damaging is that?
That you can possibly make. It's extremely damaging. A house divided against itself cannot stand. And the purpose of it, of course, is to make people throw their hands up in disgust, say, this isn't working, we need to move to another system. Go back and read the neo-Marxist literature. It's all right there. All of this stuff is not secret. That's why I encourage people all the time, go and read this stuff. You don't have to take my word for it.
You know, when you use terms like that, neo-Marxist and so on, that is what makes some people say, I like how this guy sounds, but he can never be the president because he will be described and painted and labeled as too extreme.
That's why I tell them to go read it for themselves. Vladimir Lenin, Saul Alinsky, Karl Marx, you know, I mean, these people just laid all of this stuff out. And there was a guy who was a former CIA agent by the name of Cleon Skousen, who wrote a book in 1958 called The Naked Communist. And it laid out the whole agenda. You would think by reading it that it was written last year, showing what they're trying to do to American families, what they're trying to do to our Judeo-Christian faith,
do you think,
what they're doing to morality.
Carson, do you think that we are at the precipice of some fundamental sea change in this country right now?
Well, I think if the American people throw their hands up And the majority of people in this country actually do have common sense. I'm convinced of that. But if they give in, because remember, again, go read it for yourself. Number one rule, Saul Alinsky, you make the majority think that what they believe is no longer in vogue, that nobody with any intelligence thinks that way, and that the way you believe is the only way intelligent people believe. That way, they will give up. That way, they will submit. We cannot submit. We have got to stand up for America. And in the long run, I think it will be better for everybody, because even the most left-wing elements in our nation will benefit when we get this economy moving in the right direction again, when we manifest the right kind of leadership, when we reestablish the right kinds of programs in our country, when we shrink the government and in a kind way. Thousands of people, retire from the government each year. Right. Don't replace them.
Understood.
Just move them, shift them in from other places. In 4 years, we'll be down to the right size. We can focus on what the government's supposed to do, and that way they won't be sticking their nose in everybody's business.
Want the folks to know that Dr. Ben Carson placed second in the presidential polling at the Republican Leadership Conference, third in the CPAC straw poll, and he is a star now among many conservatives and Republicans, and many believe has a real shot at becoming the next president of the United States. We will continue to follow you, sir. Thank you for being here tonight.
Thank you very much for having me.